Hello everybody and welcome back to this tutorial, and let us take a look at different libraries and modules that we can use in order to perform, let's say, FTP connection and file transfer, in order to send emails using the SMTPlib library, and also take a look at the URL-lib module. Even though we took a look at before at the request module, we're also going to take a brief look at the URL-lib module right now. Okay, so basically Python has library of modules for interacting with a variety of standard internet services such as HTTP, FTP, SMTP, NNTP, and so on and so on. And right now we're going to take a look at some of them. Okay, so first of all, let us start off with the URL-lib module, because that is the one that is mostly similar to the one that we already did before, which is the request module. Therefore, you really shouldn't have a problem at understanding it. Basically, a high-level module or URL-lib module is a high-level module that allows clients to connect a variety of internet services such as HTTP, HTTPS, FTP, local files, and so on and so on. It works with typical URLs on the web. So let us open up our idle in order to check it out. Simply, just to import it, you would type import URL libs. Now make sure that you add double L, so URL and then lib. Press here enter and you will see that it will import it without any error. Okay, so first thing that we're going to take a look at, simply, or basically one of the only things that we're going to take a look at in the URL-lib module, is opening a web page. So it is similar as in the requests. Simply all you need to do is specify, for example, u equals URL lib dot URL open, and in between the brackets you will need to specify the page that you want to open. So for example, let's say http www.python.org. Let me see right here. Module URL-lib has no attribute URL open. What do you mean has no attribute URL open? Of course it does. Let me just go right here. URL-lib URL open HTTP. Let's try a different website. Okay, for some reason it doesn't seem to have the actual URL open attribute. Weird, but it doesn't even matter. We will just skip over that one, as the URL-lib is not even that much. So let us go on to the different thing, which would basically be the FTP protocol. Now don't worry about this URL-lib, I just want to show you that it does exist. It is not really used anymore, as the request library is much more used, and we covered the request library before. Therefore, we're simply just going to skip it. You don't really need it, and for some reason I was pretty sure that this function exists, but it doesn't seem to really exist. Therefore, we're going to go on to the FTP protocol. Okay, so first of all, I will restart this and we will continue with the FTP protocol. And in order to do that, you can simply just import a library called FTPlib. So basically the module FTPlib defines the class FTP and a few other related items, but the FTP class implements the client side of the FTP protocol. We can use Python to write programs that will perform a variety of automated FTP jobs, such as, for example, mirroring other FTP services. It is also used by the request module to handle URLs that use FTP. Okay, so let's take a look at the example of using the FTPlib module. So we can import it just like this from FTPlib, import FTP. Press here enter, it will import it without any problem, and right now we can simply just connect or try to connect to a host using FTP. So in order to do that, we will use the FTP class and we will create an object which we will simply just call FTP, then call the FTP class, and the class takes one argument, and that argument is going to be the actual name of the server that we want to connect, or the host name. We can go ftp.debian.org, press here enter. Okay, so this refuses it. Let's go with my router 192.168.1.1. You can simply just use any FTP host you want. In my case, I will just use router. And then, in order to create the user anonymous and password anonymous login try, you can simply just type FTP login and open and close brackets. And basically, if it is allowed, you will be able to log in. If it is not allowed, you will get this error that I got right now. User anonymous cannot log in because the anonymous username and password are probably blocked in my router, as well as they will probably be blocked at any FTP server that basically is reconfigured and updated. Okay, so once you actually get into the FTP server, there are certain tasks that you can perform, such as, for example, ftp.cwd, which basically changes into a certain directory that you specify in between the brackets. So, for example, home directory or /home, doesn't even matter. It would change into /home directory. Okay. Now, another thing that you would be able to do once you log in into an FTP server is use a function retrieve lines basically, and in between the brackets you simply just type list, and what this will do is it will simply just list directory contents. Okay. And in order, there are a bunch of other things that you can do with the FTP module and what you can do right after you log into the FTP server or host, which I currently don't really have. That's why I'm just showing you these functions. But more about actual FTPlib you can find online on the official Python 3 page. And in order to, let's just take a look at another function. In order to quit the FTP login session, you can simply just use ftp.quit, and it will simply just quit the FTP. Now right here in my case it says login failed because I didn't really even log into my own router. But if you were to log in, you would simply just type ftp quit, and then you would quit the actual FTP login session. Okay, let us close this, open up our idle once again. Idle. And what we will do right now is we're going to take a look at sending emails using the SMTP library. Okay, now first of all, what is the SMTP? Well, the SMTP is a protocol which handles sending an email and routing email between mail and servers. Basically, Python provides us with the SMTPlib module, which defines an SMTP client session object that can be used to send mails to any internet machine with an SMTP or eSMTP listener daemon. Okay, so let us take a look at the simple syntax to create one SMTP object, which we can later use to send an email. So first of all, in order to be able to do that, we can simply just import SMTPlib. This is the library that we will use in order to send the email, and right now we need to create the SMTP object, and we will simply just do that just by specifying SMTP object equals SMTPlib.smtp. Oh, whoops, not SMPT, SMTP. And in between the brackets you need to specify the host, the port, and the local host name. Okay, so basically the first parameter, which is the host, is the host running your SMTP server. You can specify the IP address of the host or a certain domain name. Now this is an optional argument. The next parameter, which is port, is basically if you are providing host argument, then you need to specify a port as well, which is logical. Now the port has to be the port where SMTP server is listening. Usually this port should be 25. And the third argument is the local host name. So for example, if your SMTP server is running on your local machine, then you can specify just the local host name or local host as the option. Now, an SMTP object has an instant method called sendMail, which is typically used to do the work of mailing a message. Now it takes 3 parameters. Basically, we're going to take a look at the example, don't worry, but let's first of all talk about it. So it takes 3 parameters: the sender, which is a string with the email address of the sender, which is logical. The receiver is a string list of a person that is receiving the actual message or the actual email. and the message itself, which is a message that we are going to send to our receiver. Okay, so let us take a look at the simple way to send one email using Python script. Okay, so first of all, we will import the SMTPlib, and then we will simply just add two different variables, which is going to be the sender. We can specify right here anyone@gmail.com. I'm just using made up actual emails, and the receiver will be, and we can simply just specify once again anyone@gmail.com. Doesn't matter right here. If you want to test this out, of course, specify correct emails. Just use two of your emails. Try to send an email from one, and then see whether you received it to another email. Okay, and then the next thing that you want to actually add is the message itself. So the message, you can type anything you want. Let's use the multi-line string definition with 3 open single quotes, and then we can type right here from, and then person name. We can simply just add something like this. Whoops, wrong button. Where is my greater or lesser sign? Okay, so here it is. Once again, it took me quite a while to find it. I wanted to change my keyboard in order to not make that mistake once again. And right here, we simply just specify from who it is. So anyone@gmail.com. Then in the next line, we can specify to person at this actual email address, which is anyone@gmail.com. Okay, then you would simply just type here subject SMTP email test, and then down here you would type the message that you want to send. So this is my email message. Type here dot, and then close 3 single quotes in order to define our message. Okay, so we defined 3 different variables. One of them stores the sender email, the second one stores the receiver email, and the third one is the message that we are about to send. All we are left to do right now is create the SMTP object and then send the email using the sendMail function. So let us try to do that using the try and except rule. Press here try. Let us create the SMTP object first. So SMTP object equals SMTPlib.smtp. In between the brackets, we'll specify localhost as our actual sender, because we are simply just sending over our own PC. Press here enter, and then we need to use the sendMail function and specify our desired 3 arguments in order to send the email. So let us do that. SMTP object is going to be, we are going to call the sendMail function. And in between the brackets right here, we specify our 3 variables right here, which are the sender, receiver, and one more thing that I want to mention. If you want to send this to multiple people, you can simply just make the receiver to be equal to an actual list, which is going to contain the actual number of email addresses that you want to simply send to. So different email addresses would be stored in that list. But for now on, we'll just simply use sender, receiver, and message as a third argument. And if that works, we will simply just print successfully sent email, and then accept the SMTP exception. We'll simply just print unable to send email. Press here enter for some reason. Yeah, it is probably SMTP exception is not defined. Really? Is not defined. Let us go once again and try it. So try Or let us just go without try. Let us just go SMTP object equals SMTPlib.smtp, localhost once again. No connection could be made because the target machine actively refused it. Yeah, it could be because my firewall or something like that is refusing the connection with the SMTP, even though you specify localhost. That's why we're getting this error, but doesn't even matter. The syntax goes like that. And make sure that once you actually send the email, you send it to your own self, just so you can check out whether that exists. Now, basically right here in our example of code, you placed a basic email in message using a triple quote, taking care to format the headers correctly. Now we know that we created the email headers right here in the message itself, as we can see, from, to, and subject. And to send the email using the SMTP object to connect to the SMTP server on the local machine, we need to use the sendMail function right after it, along with the message from address and the destination address as parameters, even though the from and to addresses are within the email itself. These are not always used to route the email. Now, if you are not running an SMTP server like I am, or like I'm not running on my local machine, you can use the SMTPlib client to communicate with a remote SMTP server. Unless you're of course using a webmail service such as Gmail or Yahoo, your email provider must have provided you with server details that you can supply in the SMTPlib creation. So for example, this right here, let me just find where did we code it. Okay, so this right here, if you have the SMTP server, you can simply just type here SMTP object is going to be equal to SMTPlib.smtp, and in between the brackets you will specify the server. For example, let's use the gmail.com, so smtp.gmail.com at the port 587, press here enter, and then you would simply just use the sendMail function in order to send the mail. So for example, SMTP object.sendMail, and you simply specify sender, comma, receiver, comma, message. Press here enter, and you will see that this will work whether you specified everything correctly. As you can see in my case, it says sender refused, must issue a start TLS command first. Let me see right this. Let's try SMTP object.start TLS. Okay, and SMTP object, let us just copy this and see whether that is the problem, which I highly doubt. We simply just specified non-existent email addresses. Yeah, must issue start TLS command first, doesn't even matter. We know that it wouldn't work anyway, okay, because we simply specified the email addresses that don't really exist, and we didn't really provide the actual password or username and password for that specific email, okay? But more about that later on. For now on, we are mostly interested in sending an HTML email using Python. Let me just restart this because it looks ugly from all of these errors. Let us open up our idle, import SMTPlib, and right now, let's say you want to send a text message using Python. While all of the content is treated as simple text, as we saw in the previous example, even if you include the HTML tags in a text message, it is displayed as a simple text, and HTML text or tags will not be formatted according to the HTML syntax. Now, however, the Python provides us with an option to send an HTML message as an actual HTML message. While sending an email message, you can specify a MIME version, content types, and the character set to send an HTML email. So for example, it would look something like this. You would import SMTPlib, then you would create a message variable to be equal, open 3 single quotes. You have, let's say, from and then person. I'm just showing you the format of a message that you will need to use to send to. So from at gmail.com, close the tag, then to person, and then right here you would also specify to at gmail.com. MIME version, let's say we want to specify that as well, 1.0. content type, so content dash type text/HTML, subject SMTP HTML email test. And then right here, let's say we have a message. This is an email message test. And down here, let's say you want to implement some HTML tag, you would do it just like this. So let's say you type here, oops, this is HTML message, oops, dot, then close the tags right here, /p, and let's use a header with the size of 1, let's say, doesn't even matter, this is just some simple HTML code, this is headline. Okay, then we close the HTML tag for the header, and down here you can close this simple message. And now all you will need to do is perform the same thing as before. So create the SMTP object equals SMTPlib.SMTP. Use your actual SMTP server to send the email, and then perform the sendMail function with specification of the sender email, receiver email, and the message itself. And basically right after that it should work, and you would be able to actually send the email just like that. Okay? Now, another thing that we're going to take a look at right now is sending attachments as an email. So to send an email with mixed content, it requires setting the content type header to multipart or mixed. Now we can see right here, we set the content type to be equal to text/HTML. If you simply just leave it like that, sending attachments will not really work. Now the attached file should be encoded with the pack_m function to have base64 encoding before the actual transmission. Okay, so right now let us see an example of how something like that would work like, or would look like, pardon me. You would simply need to import two libraries. First of all, we need to import the SMTPlib, of course, in order to actually send the email, and then we will import the base64 library in order to encode the data that we want to send. So let's say you want to send some file. We know how we can open file, we know how we can read from a file, so let's combine that with the encoding of the base64 in order to get our encoded content and in order to be able to send that encoded content via email. So let's say fn is our file descriptor equals open, and right here you specify some file name, doesn't even matter, as read bytes. So you type here RB, that stands for reading bytes, you press here enter, and the next thing that we want to do is get the file content. Now we can get the file content just by using the read function, so file content equals fn.read, open and close brackets, press here enter, and we are not done yet right here. We need to also encode that content so everything can be received correctly by the actual receiver. So we'll create a variable which we will call encoded content. It will be equal to base64.b64 encode, and we'll specify the file content in between the brackets. Okay, so this is something that we're going to send. We managed to extract it using the file, reading from the file, and then encoding its content. So right now you can simply just specify the sender to be equal to anyone@gmail.com. Receiver can be equal to anyone@gmail.com. And also, in order to do this, we need to also set the marker. Now, in order to actually set the marker, you would specify marker variable to be equal, and right here in between the double quotes you typed AUNIQ marker. Make sure marker, let me just see right here. Okay, so it is marker. And then you create the body of the actual message or the actual email from which you are sending the attachments from. So body equals, open 3 single quotes. This is a test email to send an attachment. Close 3 single quotes. So this is going to be the body of our email. And now we want to define to define, our main headers. We did that also in the previous example, so let's just call it main underscore headers, doesn't even matter. Open 3 single quotes from, and then person from @gmail.com. Close this tag right here, to person. Now, of course, you don't type here person, you actually type the real name of the person that you're sending to, but right now we are simply just not going to get bothered by that. We'll simply just specify whatever we want right here, gmail.com. Close the tag right here. Subject is going to be equal to sending attachment. Now, of course, it doesn't have to be named like that. This is just simply the subject or the header of your email. Now, what you do need to add is, first of all, let us just type the MIME version 1.0. Now, what you do need to add is the content type to be equal to multi-part and mixed. And also add the marker right there. So content type multi-part / mixed, then dot and comma, and then boundary equals %s, next line dash %s, and then in the next line you simply just close 3 single quotes, and right here at the end you proceed to actually type %, and in between the brackets you type twice marker, which is stored in this variable right here that we coded. Okay? Now, the next thing that you want to define is define the message action. So the message action will be equal to 3 single quotes, content type, and here we specify text /plain, and then content in the next line, transfer dash encoding column, and then 8-bit. Then you type here at the end %s, and then in the next line dash %s. In the next line, close the actual 3 single quotes and type %, and the first %s will be body, while as the second %s will be the marker. And the last thing that we need to define before actually sending the message is the actual attachment section. So we'll just type it attachment underscore section will be equal to 3 open single quotes, and simply just type here content dash type 2 dots multi-part / mixed column, and then name equals \, oops, where is the \? Yeah, okay, so here is the \, open double quotes, %s, \, double quotes, and then in the next line, content dash transfer dash encoding base 64. Make sure that the encoding is same as the encoding of the attachment that we did right here. As we can see, we use the base 64 encoding on the file content. Therefore, in the attachment section, we will specify base 64. And also another thing is the content dash disposition, the column attachment, then dot and comma, and then you simply just specify file name equals %s, and we will add it right here. First of all, we need %s right here, and then as usual dash %s, and then dash. And then in the next line, close 3 single quotes and specify %. And now let us count how many %s's we have. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we need to specify 4 things right here. The first one is going to be the file name. The second one is also going to be the file name. The third one is going to be the actual content of the file, so encoded content. And the fourth one, as usual, is going to be the marker. Okay, and this will be our entire message. All we are left to do is simply just add all of this together. So in order to add it together, you simply just type message equals, and then you simply just type here main headers plus, and then message action plus, and then the last thing, which is attachment section. Press your enter, and now you have the message, and all you would have to do right now is simply create the SMTP object, which is going to be equal to smtplib.smtp. Specify your server or local host, doesn't even matter, and then basically SMTP object dot send mail, and you simply just specify sender, receiver, and the message that you are sending. And then you basically send the message over email with the attachment from the file. So that would be about it for the sending emails. Now we took a look at quite some stuff, just sending from sending the simple email to sending the email with an attachment. Now make sure that you always change this, or just pick your own server over which you're sending the actual emails. If you simply just leave it like this, it will not work, as you saw in my previous case. So make sure that you specify that information correctly, which can be different for anyone. And hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope I will see you in the next one. Hope I see you there, and take care. Bye.